Okay, so we are recording and we are streaming to YouTube, and we're just waiting to kick it off.
Okay, so we have a few more minutes.
We are recording and we are streaming to YouTube, and
Laura, do you want to let in, do we have folks here from DCG? Yeah, I don't know who that is.
bear with me just a second and I will see who we've got. Let's see. Okay. How do I get this back so I can see? Oh shit.
Oh, you can just move it out of the way. Okay, I think I'm supposed to kick us off. Is that right, Ms. Chalkley? Okay,
Yes,
all
sir.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. We have 73 attendees, and I think that that is sort of indicative of the fact that Zoom meetings are often much easier to attend, and so that in many ways they've been an addition to democracy, if you will. My name is Kevin Skelly. I'm the superintendent of the San Mateo Union High School District, and also here on as panelists are Ms. Liz McManus, who is the deputy superintendent, the chief business officer of the district, and then Laura Chalkley, who is the manager of communications for the district. And then we have folks from DCG Strategies, the firm that's helping us with the sale of Crestmoor, also who will be answering questions. First, I want to thank people for coming. I know that this is 7 o'clock in the evening, and we all have commitments to other folks, and your interest in this is really important to us, and that's that's why we're having this meeting, and that's why we in the board are dedicated to having a process here that is inclusive, that's transparent, that involves the community, and goes through things in a way that answers questions and provides people with plenty of opportunities for input. I want to recognize the school board members who are here. We agendized this meeting. They will not be making comments at the meeting, but they all informed me that they would be here. And I've noticed that Mr. Bob Griffin is here. He's the vice president. Mark Friedman, who is the president of the board right now. Greg Land is a trustee. Linda Least-Dwyer, and then Peter Hanley. So we want to thank them, and they're keenly interested in the work that we're doing here, as well as hearing firsthand what your comments and thoughts are as we go through this presentation. Ms. Chalkley has shared her screen here, so I'm going to walk us through the slides here as time goes on. I want to remind you that if you have questions or comments, you can email crestmoor@smuhsd.org, and we will answer those questions. Many of those questions people sent before the meeting, and those will be part of our presentation, either incorporated into the presentation or answered at the end of the question, at the beginning of the question and answer time. So if we can go to the next slide. So this is a outline of our objectives tonight. First, we'll share the history of Crestmoor. We'll go over the highlights. Many of you, I know from previous meetings, know as much, well, a lot more than we do or will present tonight about Crestmoor, and that we know that there are plenty of alumni of the school and other folks who know the school well. We'll provide a property overview. We'll discuss the key players involved in the sale of Crestmoor, discuss why the district is selling Crestmoor. We'll take questions from the public, and then we'll discuss the next steps as we go forward. So the next slide. So I'm going to ask Ms. McManus to go through the history of Crestmoor for us here.
Perfect. Well, welcome, and this will be very short. Crestmoor was opened in 1962 and was a comprehensive high school and closed because there was 2 high schools in San Bruno and we were experiencing declining in enrollment. Since the late 1980s, the property has pretty much been used for storage, but then in the 80s, Peninsula High School moved into the Crestmoor site, and it has resided in that in that location since then. As the buildings are now 58 years old, they are showing their age, they're deteriorating, and the district has a desire to move Peninsula High School to a centrally located area that is accessible by public transportation, The main purpose for this is to reduce the travel time for our students. In some cases, we have students on buses for 1 to 2 hours a day, to and from. We are building a state-of-the-art learning facility that is in a business park, and we are hoping to provide our students with internships and opportunities for positions. Next slide, please. Okay. The district, the new Peninsula High School is located at 860 Hinckley Road, and it's in a pretty light industrial area in Burlingame. It's over kind of by the Hotel Row, and construction is underway. The property was purchased. The construction began in January of this year, and we're expecting it to be completed by the fall of this year, and students to be moving from the Crestmoor site down there in the fall. In March of 2019, the board voted to declare Crestmoor a surplus property. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Kevin for the regarding the best value criteria.
Okay, so one of the things that a district can do when it's selling property is it can just take the highest bidder. And so we asked the state, who has a lot of rules and regulations about the selling of property, for a waiver. And the reason for that is that often if you get the highest bidder, those bidders can't come through. They don't have the financing. They can't make that happen. And so you want to have a process that you use a request for proposals, request for qualifications. And so you can find out who has the ability to do the deal, who will work with the community, who has the construction capability, and they'll be sensitive to community needs and community interests as we go through that. So it's a process similar to what the elementary district did with the Engvall site, and we think it's in the best interest of both the district and San Bruno to go through that process. I also want to say that just to go back, that we'll outline a process here and talk about developers. And one of the pieces on this that we should make clear is that a developer is crucial to this process. There are design elements that are associated with that. There are interests of neighbors associated with that. And those are questions that we will probably not be able to answer tonight, but we're committed to working with somebody who will provide and listen to the community on those issues. So I want to set expectations that we're really early in a process like this that will take plenty of years and multiple opportunities for the community to engage in this process besides just tonight's evening. So, Ms. McManus.
Okay, the Crestmoor property is on 40 plus acres, and of the 40 acres, 25 acres or approximately 25 acres are developable as for houses. The site is bounded by residential subdivisions on the northwest and southwest side. A church is near the northeast corner, and there is a slope to Interstate 280 to the east. Most of the surrounding areas are residential, and there is a San Mateo County Parks, Junipero Serra Park to the southeast. We also have the Sawyer Camp Trail Road and San Andreas Lake open undeveloped land that's owned by the San Francisco Public Utility Commission to the southwest. There is a road that goes through the property, and it's accessible from Cortland Drive. The property is currently zoned single-family residential R1, which allows for 1 to 8 houses to be built per acre. And
okay. So let me discuss a little bit about the process involved in this, and as well as the entities who are involved. First of all, the property we own, the district, San Mateo High School District owns this property. I'm not sure all the details of the sale, but the district purchased that land for the purpose of building a school. And over the years, we have rented the fields to the city of San Bruno. I think that it's $1 a year. I'm not sure we've been collecting, but basically it's been, the expectation has been the city of San Bruno maintains those fields and then uses it for public use as it goes forward. We talk a little bit about the mission of the district. Our goal is to have the best educational program in the state, if not the nation. We believe that our district is a main driver in the property values in our area, and we are dedicated to to that work and providing a high quality education. We serve about 9,000 students in the district. About 1,200 of those attend Cappuccino High School, and the 6 schools that we serve, 3 of them are located in San Mateo. Those are Aragon, Hillsdale, and San Mateo. There's obviously Burlingame High School in Burlingame, and then Mills in Millbrae. And then to the north is another district, and then to south of San Mateo is the Sequoia district. The Board of Trustees, we have 5 board members. They're elected by voters in San Mateo and the communities that we serve. The other entity involved in this process is the city of San Bruno. And the city of San Bruno has 5 representatives. Their role is to make certain the development is completed in accordance with current law. So it was mentioned that the property is zoned R1. The district does not have an interest in asking for what would be called an upzoning or an increase from R1 to something more housing intensive. And the current general plan calls for an athletic field to be included in any residential development. Next slide, please. So why are we interested in selling Crestmoor? So the major reason for selling Crestmoor is to provide revenue for the district to build employee housing at another location. That location would be where they would be more intense or more dense housing than Crestmoor would allow, but it would allow teachers and other staff school employees to live where they work. We believe that, and it's no secret that cost of housing in our area is breathtakingly high. We'd have teachers that travel a long way to where they work. That diminishes their ability to be involved in the school community, to be part of the fabric of a community. And we also believe that employee housing would be a game changer for us in terms of attracting staff. All of you remember the great high school teachers that you had are the ones that were fantastic. And we need to win every great teacher that comes whenever we have an opening. And having housing would be a game-changing advantage that we would have over other districts that have, similar students and, are attractive places to live. But if folks could save money to make a deposit on a house someday, to really be part of our community, the housing, whatever housing we do build will be in our community, and then teachers will just be much more involved, and we believe much better teachers because of that. So and then the next slide I share is tells you a little bit about a survey that we completed last year. Over 1/3 of our staff presently live outside of the peninsula. Those are staff members who are typically younger, who didn't get into housing earlier in their lives, and they're more so the future of our district. And so having those staff members live outside of the peninsula really makes it so that they come into work, they dash into work, they dash home, and they're really not as invested as folks who've lived here much longer. So the other statistic is the commute. So the commutes of some of our staff members are very, very long, and that contributes to traffic congestion. The other reason that's not mentioned here is to sell, I think the board took into consideration is up until this fall, we have needed the Peninsula site. We've needed it for Peninsula High School. We've had various operations pieces up at the school, but now that we're not a part of where there's no more district presence up there, that site becomes something of an attractive nuisance, where the facility is falling apart, where it's very difficult to maintain. We'll need to fence it off and make all kinds of changes that will over time really diminish the sense of the community sense there. So the next slide goes in a little bit more to what staff told us, the rent that they're paying, and how they feel vulnerable for rent increases or the ability to renew their lease. And so then so over 9 out of 10 of our employees told us that this will impact their ability to stay in the area. So we think this is a crucial piece of our long-term strategy to maintain the quality of the district as we go forward. So the next slide, I'm going to turn over to our staff from our consultants from DCG to walk us through the next couple of slides. So I'm going to turn this over to you, Landis.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And our role, DCG Strategies, we focus with helping public school districts in the state of California facilitate their real estate transactions. And so we do this work up and down the state, and we're working with numerous districts currently. And so what we wanted to just alert you to is where we are in the process. And so the district has been very focused on making sure that the public isn't left behind. And the district is extremely sensitive to how this project is ultimately developed. And a big part of that development is making sure that the community is engaged, is informed, and that it's a very good collaborative process. So the district is very keen on, as Superintendent mentioned earlier, the education code for the state of California prescribes a disposition process. And many districts just go with the highest bidder. And what that means is whoever bids the most money, they award the contract, and there is very little engagement or control over that entity. By applying for the waiver, the district wanted to keep its hands on the pulse to make sure that it's engaging with a good community partner that is thoughtful in the development process. And as a result of that, the district opted to first start with a request for qualifications. Why that's significant is because before you go to an RFP, it allows the district to screen developers, not only for just the capacity, but searching for potential developers that understand the unique nature of this particular site. And so we went out for a request for qualifications, which is a solicitation to the development community, letting them know that if they meet certain criteria, they will be invited to respond to an RFP. So that's where we are at this point. So there's been a request for qualifications that went out, and the responses were back in April. The board did review those, and the respondents were notified on May 22nd that they would be invited to the next round, which is where we're at now, releasing the RFP, which is a request for proposals. At this stage, that's where we're going to get very specific information from the developers, and we'll get the first gleaming of what their ideas are for the site. And that will be something that the board then weighs before it moves into identifying a particular candidate to begin negotiations. And so by the end of this week, the board will release an RFP. Just to give you comparison, a lot of districts just opt for an RFP process only, and then they go to the highest bidder. So this board has slowed down, the district has slowed down and said, no, we want to really go slowly, methodically, and very thoughtfully in this process. And so there are these extra steps that it's put in to protect the community interest. So when we move to the next slide, what happens from here is once the district picks the actual bidder, this is the entity that it would enter into a negotiation. We're anticipating that it's going to take several months before a contract is arrived at through the negotiations. We anticipate the board to actually pick that party by September 24th, and there should be 60 days or approximately 60 days of a negotiation. That's price and terms and other conditions in which the district will enter into a binding purchase and sell agreement for this property. From there, it becomes the developer as the buyer that then will need to go through a multi-year process with the city of San Bruno. Why that is important is because that is where the community will have its opportunity to engage with the city and with the developer. There will be other community meetings where the developer actually starts discussing the proposed development concepts. The community has an opportunity to give feedback, and it's a very engaged, the technical term is an entitlement process, but that is really driven by the City of San Bruno Planning Department. And that is where you will have plenty of time to give input and feedback to the city and to the developer as this process moves forward. But I just want to emphasize that just because the district moves into a binding contract, by no means is the process over. It's actually just beginning. And so one of the most substantial parts of this process is the environmental impact process. When we go to the next slide. And when communities, especially projects of this magnitude where you have a lot of open space, there are certain environmental impact reports happen for development projects, but in particular, there are 9 areas that the city who will bring in environmental, most likely they will bring in a specialist to focus on this. The development will look at traffic and the implications to traffic, open space, biological, cultural, historical, noise, greenhouse gas emissions, geotechnical, and arborist. I read through those fast, but you can see those in the slide. And basically, these are the areas that are studied for impacts. And if there turns out to be an area where there's a negative impact, it's incumbent upon that developer to work with the city to mitigate those impacts. So this is part of how the community is protected. And so if there are issues, and we've all heard of species that may be discovered and the developers may have to relocate. We've all heard of issues where, maybe there are some trees that need to be preserved. This site, there's going to be a special emphasis on traffic and what those impacts will be. And this process is an open, transparent, interactive process. This is a community public hearing style of engagement. So you will be able to have input, you will be able to review the impacts that are identified, the mitigation measures, and have input into those. So this will be driven by the developer that's ultimately selected, but we wanted to just take a time and emphasize that this environmental impact review is critical for the success of this site. And this is where the community is going to have tremendous engagement. So I just wanted to highlight those for you. And then I'm going to step away for a few moments.
Okay, I want to talk about the soccer fields because I know this is a really important topic. And as I look at the participants here, I see some friends that I've talked to about soccer fields on numerous occasions when we've met to talk about Crestmoor. The board throughout this process has made its interest really clear about working with the community to provide soccer fields to meet the needs of the community. This is, we realize some of our board members have refed up at soccer up at Crestmoor. We have board members who coached soccer teams up there, and we've been there. And my kids played soccer up there some too, and so we realize that this is an integral part of the community. And so we want to work with the city on this topic. We're dedicated to it. I should mention that, and we will post this on the Crestmoor web page on the district website, that we are in the process of building some of the finest athletic fields and they can be used for youth soccer at Cappuccino High School. Those right now, if you go by Cappuccino, you'll notice that we're putting in a turf field on the stadium. As soon as that project is done, or very shortly thereafter, we'll begin work on upgrading the 3 other fields that are on that campus: the auxiliary field located next to the tennis courts, the baseball field, and then the softball field, which will also become another soccer field. So when this is all done, Cappuccino will have some of the finest facilities certainly in the county, and those are going to be fields that that the board has signaled very strongly that they want to see the community use. But I think that there's also, I know, an interest on the part of the city of San Bruno for other soccer fields to meet the needs of the community. So this is a high priority that's recognized by all parties as we go forward. In terms of the second bullet here, the district and the city of San Bruno each selected 2 representatives. When I say representatives, I mean in the case of the district, board members, and in the case of the city council, 2 Mr. Rico Medina and Laura to represent us, to represent the city on these. And we've met 3 times to review the soccer usage. They discussed ideas and shared interests. No decisions have been made or could be made by this joint group. Those are decisions that the city council and the district boards would have to make. And at this point, those are just discussions. We have reviewed the field usage and needs of San Bruno, AYSO, and Lowen soccer fields. And I said Laura, I meant Linda Mason. Sorry about that. The district is really keen that whoever the developer is committed to working with the community and ensuring the availability of soccer fields. And on that score, I think that that soccer fields continue to be really important, and that developers will receive both a recording of this meeting as well as the notes that come from it. And they may actually, if they're smart, they'll be paying attention today as we go through this themselves. Next slide. Okay, so I think, Ms. Chalkley, this brings us to our questions. So we have a few that we received beforehand, and I may pass these on to other members of our panel here, but let's go through those if you don't mind.
Thank you, Dr. Skelly. I'm alone in my office, so I'm going to take my mask off. So the first question is, what will the district developer do to make sure that some open space is maintained?
Right. So we've had several meetings in the community, and some of you may have attended. I don't think we've had this many people there, but that's one of the advantages of Zoom. But this issue of open space is a high priority and has been expressed by council members and members of the public. The general plan calls for preservation of open space as part of any development on the site. This could include pocket parks or trails, which would capitalize on the assets of the site, and the district's expectation that significant open space will remain as part of the Crestmoor site. Landis, I'm putting you on notice that I'm going to ask you to add to these answers if I or correct me if I want. But let's go through a couple more of them, and then we'll pass it on to you if you could help us.
You answered that one perfectly.
Okay.
The city of San Bruno will definitely make sure that open space requirements are met. That's part of the negotiation that the city would go through with the developer that ultimately would be held in a public hearing for the community to also give input.
Lauren?
Okay, so the next question is, what will the developer do to mitigate the increase in traffic that new housing could bring to the area?
So Len, this is another one where you may have more information, but I'm sure you run into traffic issues on any development project. And we know that the developer is legally obligated to undergo traffic studies as part of the EIR process that you mentioned. And so we're always interested, any developer is interested in minimizing those traffic issues.
Yeah, they're going to have a legal obligation to mitigate those traffic issues per the EIR process. So you're absolutely right.
Okay, the next question is, why did the district close the fields at Crestmoor in July?
Yeah, so we've closed actually all of our fields in the district because of COVID-19 and social distancing. This is a pandemic, and it's, we had a board meeting last week, and there was pleading about, social distancing, wearing masks, those pieces. We found that this is as we've gotten complaints, we've gotten comments from staff that this is a problem area because, it was one of the only places open to play soccer. And so that's why those were closed. And so, we really want to all do our part to keep those practices, and we're just not able to monitor and supervise those areas. So we felt like that was really important. For folks who are interested in that, we do have opportunities at our schools. We're interested in expanding those as health conditions allow. And we also, as soon as the fields are done at Cappuccino, the stadium fields, we plan to open those also to the community's use.
Okay, so we did receive a few comments about the fields and requests to maintain the fields or to preserve them, but I'll share the questions with you directly. So one of the questions is, will you keep fields where they are with parking or move them as a condition of building on the site?
Okay, so that's a conversation that the developer will have with the city, will be involved. We have an interest in providing soccer fields that meet the needs of the community, and the district will ensure that a developer selected is committed to working with the community and ensuring the availability of soccer fields.
Okay, the next question is, why doesn't the district lease the Crestmoor fields to youth soccer organizations?
So we've done this by renting the fields to the city of San Bruno for many, many years, but we're working with the city and soccer organizations to find a solution that provides the soccer community with modern facilities that meet their needs. Obviously, as I've talked to and AYSO and other groups have discussed this, there is a real sense that Crestmoor is a community gathering place for the Saturdays in AYSO and those. And so that's worked well. But at this point, with the district moving off the site and with some of the other needs that the district has, there's a sense that, we need to work on selling that property to continue to provide the highest quality of education for our students.
Okay, so the next question is, we had a few specific questions about landslides and mudslides and disclosure of these conditions and preventing damage to nearby homes. So some general questions about that, but specifically, will owners along Madison be granted an additional 75 feet of land up the hill behind their current property? And could dirt be removed by a developer to gain more developable land?
So I'm gonna defer some of this to Landis here, but we did provide all the developers with the geotechnical studies, and they're aware of existing conditions. There are, as the writer of this knows, in San Bruno, there are many places where the earth moves and there's slippage, and that's actually happening quite a bit on the Peninsula campus right now. So the developer will be keenly interested in this and will work with the city to prevent any dangerous conditions from the nearby homes and structures, and any erosion things in terms of trees are also important. That said, it's doubtful that homeowners would receive additional land. But developers, I don't think, have the ability to move dirt to in any way that would compromise safety. But Landis, I welcome your thoughts on that question.
Sure, in terms of just land, in terms of changing land or granting land, that's kind of beyond all of our scope at this stage. But in terms of the technical aspects of landslides and other environmental conditions or soil conditions, part of the request for qualifications process is making sure that the pool of qualified respondents are sophisticated and experienced enough to handle very complicated projects. So everyone that is on the list to receive the RFP have the breadth, the scope, the resources, and the technical expertise to sort through those very tough issues. And they will also have a myriad of technical experts, engineers, and others that will walk through all those existing conditions. And so that's just part of regular development, especially when you have hillside and slope issues. The developers will have the experts out that are specializing in those particular disciplines.
Okay, so we've gotten a few questions in over email since the meeting began, so I'll share these with the group. Okay, will the forested hillside between the campus and existing residential properties be preserved? If not already established, this should be a condition on sale.
Okay, so Landis, I don't know how we would answer that in terms of before you have a developer, but I would be surprised if that would be something that would be a problem as you look at the development or potential development.
Right, so I think that's going to be a conversation between the city and the developer, to be honest, in terms of what the city is going to want the developer to preserve as part of open space. I think that's part of the negotiation, and that's normal in these type of scenarios and where there's going to be a negotiation between the city and developer. And that we won't until the developer is sitting in front of the city and having a conversation about what preservation requirements there are, we can't speculate. We can only assume that there will be preservation, but that's a speculation. And I think there is unbuildable area that's probably better to be maintained because the developer can't use a lot of the area anyway. So it's going to make most sense for them to maintain the areas that are sloped that they can't build where a lot of the forested areas are anyway. So just from experience, I can't imagine them tearing that stuff down.
Okay, the next question is, considering the rarity of available land in the county, is there any way for the district to remain ownership and for any needed future use and pursue private leases instead?
I guess there are. Landis, I think you might be able to talk a little bit about that piece. I can't. Well, anyway, I'll let you take a first shot at that question if you don't mind.
So preserving ownership of some of the land at Crestmoor, I think it will probably work counter to your goal of being able to drive revenue resources to help build your desired employee housing. So I don't know if that's viable or not. And I think right now it's a for sale proposition. So I don't see it as likely that there will be a long-term land lease.
Okay, the next question, statement is, the district is currently a good neighbor, maintaining trees and land adjacent to properties, but can this be assured after the sale?
I mean, I think once again, we will select a developer who will be committed. And I would imagine if, you know, that the property goes to a developer, the city's going to hold their feet to the fire in terms of, you know, maintaining trees, those pieces. There would obviously be some sort of an interim time there where there would be, you know, where the developer would own the land and the homeowners wouldn't. But Landis, you're in a better position to answer this question than I am, I think.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the entire development is going to be turned over to the community and to the public. So the developer is in the developer's best interest to be a good neighbor, and then there's neighbors in the open space. I'm sure there'll be some agreement between the park district, or if it's private, a homeowners association. So the developer will be out at some point, and then it's subject to who takes over, which will be the homeowners and then the public amenities. So them being a good neighbor all the way through that's part of our screening and selection process.
Can a developer earn higher density development opportunities if they leave more open space, incorporate transit solutions, and provide other community-focused elements?
That's really a question for the city. That's not for the district as the seller, because that's through what the zoning, land use requirements, and if the city has goals to see higher density, which I don't think, but that's part of the entitlement process, and that's beyond the district scope at this point.
Okay, the next question is an easy one, so I'll just address it if that's okay, Dr. Skelly. We got an email asking if a copy of the presentation would be made available, and most certainly we can add that to our website. So the answer is yes. The next question is, what is the maximum possible number of single-family lots that can be built once Crestmoor is sold?
That's another question for the city, to be honest with you, because the density has land use restrictions in terms of the number of lots, but that question says what's the maximum? So that it's either maximum per existing zoning, which isn't going to maximize the potential density, which will require a higher zoning. So I don't think that's a question that the district could answer, because it's really a function of zoning versus just the maximum allowable density based on the available land area, which is much more than what this current zoning allows. And as the superintendent noted earlier, there is not an incentive or motivation by the district to increase the density.
This is a timing question. When do you plan to clear the site?
Okay, so let me take a shot at clearing. During the next few years, provided this pandemic is done, we don't anticipate not allowing the community to use the soccer fields, right? If, this was a health decision, so we're not interested in sort of not allowing the community to use the soccer fields. I mean, that would not be a good decision by us. In terms of clearing the site for Peninsula High School, we at this point, when we move out, we anticipate fencing off the school so that it's not there. At some point, that school needs to come, Crestmoor needs to, or Peninsula, whatever you want to call it, needs to come down because of just for the safety of the community. So that we have not talked yet about when that will happen, but it is just a question of when. We haven't done, I don't think, any significant work on that campus since it was built. It's certainly not we don't want it to be an attractive nuisance, which it could easily turn into without some care. I think that answers the question there, but I did want to make one more comment. We mentioned about, posting these things. We are trying very hard to communicate well on this, and you may have received postcards. We mailed them within a half-mile radius. We sent an e-newsletter to over 4,300 stakeholders. We've had district e-news over time. It was in the city managers, San Bruno city managers e-newsletter, and then it's been on our district website, and we do have a Crestmoor page. But if you didn't see this, or somehow people who should be involved in this, we want to please send an email to this address and with your email and contact information, and we want to be sure that we keep you informed every step of the way when things happen here.
The next question is really kind of seeking clarity on the sale of the Crestmoor site. The person is asking, are the homes at Crestmoor going to be rentals for the teachers? So if you could offer a little clarity on the process there.
No, they won't. The district's interest is, and this is based on surveys with families as well, and the zoning of the place. Our target audience for staff and teacher housing are young teachers who move into the area, whose salaries are lower, who are beginning their career, who need to save money for a down payment. We would follow a model that the community college district has done, where you provide folks a place to live at a below market rate rental, and for 5 years, with the expectation that they save money, and then they're in a position to buy property in our community and settle in that way. But we don't, given it's R1 zoning, apartment buildings or those kinds of things are not the kind of housing that is envisioned given the zoning there. So Crestmoor, plus, the staff that, responded, the young staff that responded were more interested in living closer to transit arteries and those kinds of things.
The next question is related to fields, and it is, are we to understand that the proposed resolution is to provide access to alternative fields? There appears to be a
Yes.
net reduction in the number of fields.
So that's part of the process that we've had discussions with the city council members and the board. Both parties are aware of all the aspects of it. And then, you have to get a developer in and have some discussions about are the soccer, what is the best location for the city of San Bruno for soccer fields?
Okay, the next question is to provide clarity between the ballot measure. Could the difference between CAP and the ballot measure versus Crestmoor soccer fields be clarified? CAP improvements are due to ballot measure, separate and apart from Crestmoor field general plan requirements.
That's right. Thanks to the voters in our district, we passed a bond measure that is $385 million of a decade's worth of work to improve and enhance our high school sites. That money is devoted to a lot of different things. One of which is the bringing up of the fields at Cappuccino and Mills to higher levels, and frankly, leapfrogging the other 4 schools in terms of their outdoor athletic facilities. They'll have lights, they'll have, just the best fields we possibly can. Those are district fields. The city council members who have been there have expressed an interest in knowing more about those, and the designs of those we'll post on this website, as well as provide them. We've also shared them with city council members, but the city council members have an interest in having more fields in the San Bruno community, and improving and looking at those. So we are aware of that. As mentioned, the board has an interest in working with the city and the community to make sure that the soccer needs are part of this equation.
Is there a community input opportunity for selecting the final developer? That is a question. We have, I will bring that up with the board. At this point, the board has not said how they will do it, except that it's their to call. So their process for doing it, I don't know, Landis, if you have anything to add on this.
I will. And so, and community members, just bear with the thought. So it's to the disadvantage of the public in the school district to include community input, because there's no way to protect the confidential nature of the negotiations. And so the district's in a position where it has to negotiate with the developer, and it has to protect the privacy of those negotiations. So I don't know of a way to involve community input without compromising a negotiation. But the requirements imposed upon a developer, such as open space and preservation of trees and traffic, those are the things that the board is, as your representatives, looking out for the community's best interest as the fiduciary of the asset. And so part of the board's role is to represent the community as your elected officials, to make sure that they're protecting the best interests of the community. So meetings like this and allowing for questions, I think it's imperative for the community that if you have some pressing issues that you have not heard addressed, I would advise you to make sure the board is aware of whatever those priorities or concerns or needs and wants that the community wants to make sure are included in the negotiation process. But including the community into the negotiations isn't something that is part of the process in terms of selecting the developer. So I think that the board should be carrying with it the concerns of the community as they negotiate. And then there will be a time where that is revealed to the public once a developer is selected.
The next question is, why aren't we asking our developers to build housing for our teachers and first responders?
Our goal through this process is to build housing for teachers and staff members. And so that's what, I mean, the developer will be doing that by giving us resources so that we can turn around and build that housing.
Okay, I think you addressed this question, where will the affordable housing be built? Crestmoor, I think you answered that about 2 questions ago. Okay, the next question is, does the city of San Bruno have the right to purchase some of the property at a reduced cost? If so, how much, and what would be the cost?
So there is something called the Naylor Act, and I don't know, Landis, if you're better equipped to answer that question,
Sure.
probably than I.
Sure. So part of the governing law, which is the Ed Code that school districts must follow when they sell properties, is they have to go through a surplus property process. And so this district has been through that process. So the superintendent is referring to the Naylor Act, which says the first entity that the district must offer the land to are public parks. Next on the list is the city. So the city of San Bruno, the park district, and other public agencies had an opportunity to acquire the site when the property went through the public process of the surplus, how the surplus school sites are managed. And so that was offered to the district, to the city, and now it's only then when they pass this, the school district has the right to sell it to the public, which is where we are now.
Oops, sorry. Is the use of the soccer fields included as a requirement for the request for proposals? Where is the RFP being published for community review and comment? Are there any community outreach teams currently canvassing community needs?
I'm not sure what the last part. The board approved the request for qualifications and the request for proposals at its March 12th board meeting. So if you go to the board agendas and go to March 12th, you'll see a copy there of that. And Ms. Chalkley, we can move the RFQ and RFP onto the Crestmoor webpage if it's not already there. What were the other parts of that question? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Bear with me. Let me find that again. But let me ask another question, and then while you're answering this one, I'll go back to the previous one. And this is a question about traffic, which I think we answered. But there's a specific question: will there be a stoplight or stop sign installed between Rosewood and Cortlandt Drive?
That's part of the city entitlement process. So all traffic. Everything to do with traffic, whether it be stop signs, four-way signals, crosswalks, those are all part of the city process that is negotiated with the developer. So taking traffic counts, determining where you have to put those traffic, I would say, I'm going to call it mitigations for lack of a better term. The other question was community input for the RFP, RFQ. That was the other part of the question. And that was at the public hearings of the board meeting where the board did open. There was a public hearing, and people that were at the board meeting were able to watch it, had an opportunity to provide input at that particular time.
Okay, this is another question about numbers of houses. Do you know the exact number of houses on the site approximate number 10, 20, 50?
No way to determine that now. It's going to be driven by the zoning, which is R1 at this present time.
And just to remind folks, R1 means 1 to 8 units per acre.
Okay, the next question is, has your process for choosing a developer focused on developers that would specialize in building standard single-family homes? Or are any developers under consideration who might consider building missing middle style units that would be naturally affordable, even if it might require rezoning or a variance?
So missing middle is typically, folks call it workforce housing. And with the missing middle, and this is what I'm deducing from the question, is the 80% of AMI to 100% AMI. So that missing middle is that there's no subsidy available for that income part of our population. No, these will be sold to a developer who we believe is going to sell market units. The school district's going to build missing middle units, but it will be for school district employees.
Okay, bear with me just a moment here. Okay, in the interest of diversity, equity, and inclusion, when selecting a developer, will the district give priority to companies that are owned by underprivileged minorities or pledge to employ a significant fraction of minorities?
The only qualifications are those that, so if there are minority-owned firms that qualify, which has to be experience developing in the area, enough resources to pull off such a massive development, and other particular technical criteria, anyone who fits that criteria is welcome.
Does the district have a property already purchased for the construction of teacher housing? Where in the county will this proposed below market rate housing be located?
So we don't. I think it's no secret that one of the things that we have been exploring or has been discussed is at several occasions is placing the housing on the Mills High School campus. The board has not taken any action on that. They've looked at various things. We've had community meetings in Millbrae on this topic, but no decision has been made on to do that. What I can say is that it will be in the district, and the district is interested in places that would be attractive to the community and allow staff to be heavily involved in school activities and be part of the community. I want to go back and ask you, Landis, if there's any sort of below market rate requirements on this, or how those things are handled. Is that more of a question for the developer later, or what are the expectations there?
So that's a question for the city of San Bruno, if they require what we call an inclusionary set aside, which some cities will say 15% of units above a certain number, you require to set aside X percentage of the development for affordable housing. So that's really a city of San Bruno requirement. It's typically a city policy. Sometimes they impose it across the board, and other times they might impose it on particular developments.
And then isn't there also the way to somehow contribute to a fund for that as well?
Most cities will have in lieu development impact fees, where some of those are set aside for either affordable housing and school. So that typically cities have sets of fees in which, you're right, there will be a certain portion of those fees set aside for affordable housing, as well as parks, as well as school district fees and things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, how will the fields at Cappuccino High School be used when they have their own functions? Will there be a designated park on the sold property?
I think there will be some sort of parks and open spaces. I mean, you can't build a place like that without putting in, some recreational opportunities, and that's part of how you sell homes, is to do that. In terms of Cappuccino, our expectation or our experience is that if you look at not this year's sports seasons, but in a typical year, you will see that in the fall, football and cross country are the main two activities that take place on a high school campus in the fall, while that is the major community time. So, and our football teams have not in the past practiced on Saturday. So we see the weekends as fertile times for the community to use our facilities. So that's a piece. And then if you go to the winter, you're talking about fields that will be turfed, so they won't be places that that are just unusable during the winter months when it's raining. The fields will dry and be usable pretty much the same day right after inclement weather. And then in the spring, you've got baseball going on, you've got softball, but you still have auxiliary fields and you still have weekends. I mean, the major time when school facilities are used by the school is during the week. And then I should just add that, with lights on these facilities too, and I know the soccer folks are using the old lights that the district gave them up on the hill that are gas powered. Well, there's a reason we built lights on stadium lights at our schools. We would certainly, when we don't need the schools, we would certainly allow the community to use those.
The next question goes to the new Peninsula High School. How much of the bond money will be used to build the new Peninsula High School in Burlingame?
Ms. McManus, you want to take a shot at that?
The total construction, including the property, is around 33 million of the 185 million. So it's really there was about 5 significant projects in Measure O, and it's the last one, and so it makes up a portion of the money.
Right. So Measure L, the one that we just passed, that's money that we're not using to build Peninsula. It's the previous bond. So right. So that wasn't part of the. It's not part of the bond you just voted. The public just passed.
Correct.
Are there already geotechnical studies done and incorporated into requirements for developers to address before building? And can the surrounding property homeowners read these studies before selecting a developer?
Landis, that's your question, I think.
So there were some technical reports done and submitted to the developers, and most likely the developers are going to, whoever the selected developer is, will most likely commission their own study or have the study updated. I don't believe those studies will be made available to the public prior to selecting a developer.
Bear with me just a moment.
So while she's waiting, I do want to
go
say,
ahead, Dr. Skelly.
I'm always embarrassed when I don't remember somebody's name. And I had a senior moment there with Linda Mason, and I know she's on this call. So I want to apologize. I don't know, my mind froze there as I went through things. So my apologies, Linda.
So we've got a question, for further detail, why can't we build teacher housing on this property?
I mean, I think it's, if you're talking about where folks want to, I mean, I think physically you could, they'd be really, really nice houses. We just haven't envisioned, one house to an acre for, a very small number of staff members to have, and then other staff members not have anything. We explored that, but it just doesn't feel like it fits the zoning the city has provided here.
This is for asking for further clarity. What is the plan for the district to build affordable housing for teachers and staff? Will there, but I think the new part to this question is, will there be a surplus from the sale? And if so, how would the funding be used?
The cost estimates that Ms. McManus and I have looked at are that this is not a cheap undertaking to do. And one of the things that we're thinking about, and we haven't, the board has not given us any direction on this whatsoever. But one of the things that the community college has found is that when they originally built the housing, our district was on their list of folks that if they couldn't fill it from their own staff, they would allow our staff to rent the facilities from. Now, they are about 200 or 300% oversubscribed in the community college district in terms of interest demand for their housing versus the number of units that they have. I don't know what our situation would be, but we would be very interested if we have units available. And I think if we can, we want to build as many units as we can and try to address the needs of all of our partner districts. That includes San Bruno Park, Millbrae Elementary, Burlingame, and so forth. Because our success is tied to the success of those districts. And so when they have high quality staff, then students arrive in ninth grade ready to go and achieving great things. And we take all the credit for them, even though they got a lot of their foundation from the elementary districts. So that is definitely something that we're interested in as time goes on here. And I think is an important part of what could possibly happen here. So as the board has discussed this, if there's any, I have not heard anything different than this is money that we want to use for housing to address the critical housing needs in education in our community, and not to plow that into, certainly not into, salaries for employees or other things that wouldn't address that particular need.
So the very next question, that's a really nice segue. What about San Bruno Park School District employees? So they would be included in that mix as well, to clarify.
Yeah. Yes, and I've known the three superintendents in San Bruno Park since I've been here. All of them, and I think the community is aware of the challenges that all districts have faced with attracting and retaining high quality staff, and we're aware of the challenges in San Bruno Park that I think, frankly, are more difficult than the other communities, other partner districts that we have. I think that's an important part of this. And while San Bruno Park isn't at the table in the discussions with the city council, I know that all of us share an interest in making sure there's a high quality district there. This has some possibilities there.
The next question, I believe, is related to the new Peninsula High School. It says, read the new school. Will this be a Burlingame public school, or will San Bruno children be able to attend the new school? So maybe just some clarification on the purpose of Peninsula High School.
Right. So, Liz, I'll take a first shot at this, and you can answer if you want to add. The Peninsula has about 200 students. So the school was originally, 1,500 students up at Crestmoor. We believe that, well, first of all, it serves students from all over the district. The students and they're typically students for whom they have not been successful in our comprehensive high schools. We believe that by putting the school where it is, it'll be much more closely located to places where students can get internships that will be near the airport, other light industrial places that can serve our kids. So right now, Cappuccino is certainly not, or San Bruno is not the biggest draw for Peninsula kids, even though it's located in its community and it's very close to some students there. But it will serve all the students and continue to provide service to San Bruno youth. Liz, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I think you did a great job.
Thanks.
Okay, the next question is about current tenants up at the Crestmoor site. If the property is not sold yet and there are still geotechnical studies and EIR that need to be done, why can't current tenants stay to the end of the 2021 school year so they have time to relocate and not interrupt services?
So I'll start, and then Ms. McManus, you may want to add a few points here. You know, as I mentioned earlier, I think the grand opening of Peninsula is on November 15th or something right around that date.
Mhm.
And after that, we don't have any presence up at the campus at all. If you've been on the campus, there's a lot of space there, and it's not in good shape. And the liability issues associated with the school and the heating, utilities, and all those pieces represent significant costs to the district. And we've had conversations with tenants on this. We've extended those, but at this point, you know, those things are winding down. And so, and we've had some conversations about, you know, different possibilities there, but at this point, that's where we are.
No, and in addition, because it was built 60 years ago, we have very inefficient systems in place. I think the utility bills alone are over $200,000 a year. I think it's in excess of that. And so, and it's a system that if you want to heat one room, you have to reheat the entire building. The heating system is very undependable. It's a good day when the school has heat. All of our maintenance crew, all of our ops crew are now in Burlingame, you know, at a location that they went into 2 years ago. So at this point, there's really nobody up there to help, and we can't put people in areas where the facilities are not reliable. We need to move them out of there.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to ask all of the questions. I know there may be some repetition, but I want to make sure we hit some of the nuances. So this one is this one goes back to, given the area of the land, can't the developer build a large number of residents and preserve the field? Could you reserve first rights to a field at the local high school for local soccer clubs? And so I'll leave it at that. I think the other questions have been asked, but it's more clarification on soccer fields.
Right. So those are conversations that we have had with city council members. There's lots of views on that. I think until we get a developer in there to look at it and say, you know, hey, this, you know, are soccer fields up there compatible? Is there a better location? Where is the city in terms of its desire? Are there better locations for soccer fields? You know, obviously, if you put soccer fields up at Crestmoor, you have more traffic there, and it might make sense to make the soccer fields located in a more central place in San Bruno. And so, you know, those are conversations that we really need to have. I will say that the district, I will reiterate that the board's direction to its representatives, as well as to me, has consistently, since I started in the district 5 years ago, is, you know, we want to work with the city of you know, when we came in, one of the first things that was decided is, let's look for a new location for Peninsula. And that was a the board decided on a vote of 5-0 to move Peninsula. And when they did, the next conversation was, now that we don't have students, now that we won't have students up at Crestmoor, we're interested in building staff housing. And that led to, and at the same time, if we're going to sell Crestmoor, which the decision was made last year, and even before the decision was made, there's always been a consistent theme among the board members that, hey, we understand how important those soccer fields are. We need to work with the city to do that. We want to make a solution that works for folks, and that's a high priority for us.
Next question is about school boundaries. So if we build new housing up at Crestmoor, where will those students go to school? So for elementary, middle, and high school?
So I don't know the exact elementary school, but they would be students at Cappuccino. And I don't know the demographics of the folks on this call, but I will say, and I've said this to Linda and Rico in our conversations, that that folks in San Bruno need to have more kids, because San Bruno or Cappuccino is, when we look at the demographers, and I know this is true for the elementary district as well, I mentioned that Cappuccino has 1,200 students now, and that's about as high as it's sort of been plateaued there for quite some time. But when we look out 6-7 years, we see an enrollment not of 1,200 students, but of 900 students. Now that makes for a more intimate, smaller school, and we could have discussions about what's the best size for a school. But in terms of curricular offerings, in terms of resources, opportunities, we think a school bigger than 900 is important. And then you get into a situation in which some of you're changing the age distribution of your staff. You have an older staff because you're not bringing in new teachers. Some of the teachers that you have and you love that have just joined the school have to be transferred to other schools because enrollment falls and you don't have the staffing numbers. It's just not as, it's suboptimal. So adding students at San Bruno, we could easily handle, and we're keen to have more students there.
Okay, that is all the questions that I have, but I will reiterate that I will make sure I sort through this, and if there's anything at all that we missed, we will include it in our FAQs. I did try to combine a few where it seemed like there was overlap, but that's all I have for now.
Okay, well, look, I think I speak on behalf of the board, who I'm sure have gotten a lot out of this, and we'll discuss it at the board meeting. But I do want to thank people for coming. The questions that you've asked have been really good, and we look forward to, we hope our answers have been satisfactory, and we look forward to a process that brings about answers and closure to these topics. So, Ms. Chalkley, anything else for us? I know my screen is getting darker and darker here as the night goes on.
The only thing I would have for the good of the order is just that we will continue to update our website, and you can certainly continue to email crestmoor@swoosh.org. And that's my final word.
Right. Maybe I'll just add one more thing, that we do have a board meeting on Thursday, and that board meeting it's a public meeting. You can check out it on the website. Folks are free to ask questions directly to the board that night, as well as they'll hear the board's discussion about tonight, and then also about the RFP process. Is that it, Ms. Chalkley? It's always hard to say goodbye on a Zoom call.
That's all we have, I think, for tonight.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, and be safe and wear masks. in public.
Thank you.